After I'd made my wonderful flight over Bryce Canyon National Park, I joined back up with Dallas, who had stayed up on top. Um, well, he has a family and probably needs to stay a little safer and not take the risk that I took in flying over the pinnacles of the park. But anyway, we flew over to the Ruby's Inn campground so he could wave at his family below. They hadn't gone flying with him that morning. And then we headed out back to the north and east, just out over Bryce Canyon City. Ruby's Inn is a big part of Bryce Canyon City, but the city, if you can call it a city, has grown quite a bit in the last few years. And I am going to have to say that my hat's off to the leaders of Garfield County and Bryce Canyon City because they haven't allowed this to turn into one of those tawdry tourist traps that marks the gateway towns to so many of our national parks. It's it's very well done, I think. I think the folks who have led the development here deserve our praise, and they need to be proud of what they've done. Finally, Dallas led me out to a place called the Ruby's Inn Overlook, a spot I would never have found. Found it to be quite an interesting place. This is where the Pioneer irrigation system that takes water from the Tropic Reservoir comes to the edge of the Bryce Canyon uh, cliffs, the pink cliffs, and drops roughly 1,500 feet in a short distance to irrigate the fields and farms around the town of Tropic, Utah, which is just a few miles away from here. This 10-mile ditch was dug by hand and completed in 1892. A lot of it now apparently is underground, and just west of this overlook, it pops up out of the ground. Almost looks like a spring, but I could tell it the terrain just wasn't proper for a spring there. Then it drops down a series of cascading waterfalls and passes Mossy Cave, which is part of Bryce Canyon Park, a nice place to go back and visit where it's a little bit cooler on a hot summer day. And then heads on down to the town of Tropic and is used for their orchards and crops of various kinds. So just one of those little interesting side notes to a really great day. And you might notice my machine moving around considerably more here than it was in earlier parts of the video today. The ground was heating up. That was heating the air over it. We were beginning to get thermal updrafts, and the air was becoming pretty lumpy and bumpy. So we swung around and began heading back northwest, back out across the Ponderosa Pines, over the valley, back towards the historic Bryce Canyon Airport, which has a hangar that's actually on the National Historic Registry. The hangar was built out of local Ponderosa pine logs in the 1930s by the Civilian Conservation Corps. And this has been an important little airport for a long, long time. And I really want to thank the airport manager, Ty Ramsey, for his hospitality and allowing us to fly from an abandoned east-west runway. It was a perfect place for us to take off and land. I think some of us guys who fly these things are going to be back to Bryce Canyon before too long. There are also a couple of aviation stories that are kind of interesting associated with Bryce Canyon. On October 24th, 1947, United Airlines Flight 608, a DC-6 propeller-driven aircraft, experienced a fire in its cargo hold. The pilot was trying desperately to make it to the runway at Bryce Canyon when the fire apparently broke through into the cockpit. They lost control of the plane and crashed just about 1.5 miles away from safety. All 54 people on board that plane were killed that day. Quite a tragedy. These 3 antelope were the only wildlife I saw all day. And then a bit of a happier story. On October 6, 2000, American Airlines Flight 2821, a McDonnell Douglas MD-80 aircraft, had a pressurization problem and some smoke in the cockpit, and so the pilot landed the plane at Bryce Canyon. Everyone was safe. Later they had to empty the plane, make it as light as possible to be able to take off from the rather short runway and high altitude here. But everybody was safe, it worked out, and all was well. So, a happy end, finally, to a good story.